Channel here over at SubScribestar. I got a mailbox as well if you want to mail me a comic, something you want me to look at. So Facebook and DARPA team up to open the gateways to hell. Zuckerberg gave this little speech where he said less censorship on Meta going forward as mainstream everything, social media and media, is losing market share to alternative sources for the left and the right. So they need you back on the platform so that they can control the narrative. It's what the con ops right wing is known for, where there's a limited spectrum where the right wing, in quotes, is desperate to control the right by allowing vigorous debate within the spectrum that the Daily Wire types or will allow you to, but they will not allow anyone a millimeter farther to the right. And this is why the right has continuously been losing, because the right will disavow anyone who's a millimeter farther to the right, but the left doesn't do this. So over the past 100 years, we've been getting pushed further and further left because the right, they're not really conservatives if they don't actually conserve anything. So you take the Terminator, Blade Runner, and the Matrix movies, and we see those as fun movies, but also as a little bit of a warning. But then there are people who watch those and think, "What a great idea! let's put people in the cage and manipulate them." So what happened is Facebook or Meta brought out these AI characters that were bizarre enough to have people wondering if Zuck is a lizard person, which he actually denied it in an interview. But that's exactly what a lizard person would say. And then there's some YouTube videos from, I don't know, some Soros Globalist Incorporated media company talking about these crazy conspiracy theories. And then YouTube will give you these little Wikipedia entries. It's like Wikipedia it's garbage. It's just run by, insane people who can write anything they want. Wikipedia is not a source for anything, but it's a source to Google tech. So before we get into this, go back a few months where they had finally admitted that Facebook's virtual reality world was, I don't even remember what they called it, where it was just kind of too ahead of its time to work. And then you find out that was a $15 billion project, and you should start getting suspicious. And you analyze these things by assuming that the globalist companies are teamed up with the government to unleash horrors beyond your imagination, where if they could summon Cthulhu, they would, just to see what happens. And the people in this comment section are way too naive and trusting, especially after the events of the past 5 years with that event, over the biggest event of the past 5 years, that was the greatest wealth transfer in history. So, it's always follow the money and who benefits. And not enough people are saying, oh, well, maybe we should look into that. It's like, they're going to look into that as soon as they look into Epstein's Island, which is to say, never. So what happens with the controlled spectrum, mainstream media and social media is like something with the Wu flu, where Facebook and IG now are probably going to let you get on there and talk about it because it's finally over. So you can go in there and go into the bad science in it and, the mistakes that were made, because ultimately it doesn't matter. It was, kind of a psych op that I don't know how many people it actually worked on, because the truth of that, like, who knows? Obviously, I'm pure blood, and probably most of you are pure blood as well. But ultimately, it doesn't matter because it's over. Like, even if they try to bring it back now, and they're trying in little ways to get as much control as they can. But I think people are pretty much done with it. So they'll let you discuss that. They'll let you discuss probably even things like crime rates in certain cities, and to get more details on that. But those are penultimate. And so it's going to be a detrimental reliance situation where they get you on these platforms and you have this illusion of free speech because the spectrum has opened up to get into more politically incorrect things. And maybe they'll even let you say the slur, the T slur for the BLT community, or the F slur, Melanie Mac. But ultimately, to me, that stuff is cringy, even though I say slurs, obviously, racial and religious and sexual slurs every day, as often as I can. But it's cringy where people think that they're getting away with something because say like that, the platform letting you say F slur, T slur, whatever is not important. It's like that community doesn't matter. That in itself was kind of another psych op that had, like the whole BLT thing, the T stuff is on its way out. It was a fad that came and went. So you being able to get on Facebook and Instagram or even Twitter and say these hot words, it doesn't matter. I mean, maybe you're hurting one individual's one person's feelings, but it's like politically, it's not moving the needle. The things that are very important to discuss, they're still not going to allow those things. Like you'll that's when you'll discover, as Greenblatt says, the ADL, freedom of speech, not reach, and then a day later, Musk repeats the line word for word. Anyway, so you have to assume the worst. If you assume the worst with these companies and then take it a step beyond that, then you'll probably be on the right track. So did Zuckerberg really spend $15 billion to make a virtual reality world, or is he teamed up to do something else, either grow technology or gather information on people? And actually, Grok is kind of interesting. The AI on Twitter, you ask it to assume that DARPA and Facebook were teamed up to manipulate people, and like how you can get it to analyze scenarios, even though it'll say, well, this is a conspiracy theory and speculation, and we'll go ahead and say, like, how could Facebook and DARPA team up to manipulate the voting populace? But that $15 billion story kind of faded out of the news, which in itself is kind of odd, because the amount of money they spent, or they claim to have spent, in developing this technology, it's staggering amount of money, and a lot of it doesn't add up. Were they developing something else? And that's the point, is that with these people, you have to assume the worst. And some of it is also what the media, when you think there's a story, like the Epstein Island stuff, you think there's a story somewhere, and then you look to the media and there's a black hole. You go, okay, well, now I know there's a story there. So they came out with these AI social media characters, and at least those two were stereotypical sassy mixed race space communism characters, or at least from those photos they showed the background images. Like, oh, where's the diversity? Shouldn't there be some Asians and Europeans in this? No. It's like, you don't need diversity if it's all non-white characters. That's fine. It was a kind of a hello fellow humans moment for the reptilians at Facebook. Like I imagine the Facebook inner sanctum core is like, what was that Disney movie back in the 70s or 80s? Was it The Black Hole with not, oh God, who was that actor? Where they take off the masks and there's androids under them. And then probably in the center of it is probably a lizard person. It was kind of too disturbing for everyone, the left and the right. And this is where the dead internet theory kind of pops back into the picture, which was floating around over a decade ago, when the technology back then definitely wasn't ready. And it's still not ready now either. I know people have a lot of conspiracy theories, but technology leaks out. But it has come a long way, and it immediately makes you start thinking that in the future, assuming that there are continuing to be breakthroughs in computing power, that it's going to be possible to have social media that is all fake, where all connected AIs with fictional backgrounds and personalities and video clips and photographs, like catfishing to try to get money out of people, is going to be taken to the extreme. To the point where if you don't know the user IRL, then you don't know who's on the other end of the keyboard. That's how convincing it'll be. I think processing power would have to make a few jumps into orders of magnitude into maybe something more exotic than what we're using now. But I also assume that it's going to happen, because it usually does. And you'd finally be in dystopian horror level of ultra advanced computers, where they're intertwined into society, manipulating the cattle via social media, gathering data from the portable spy device we carry with us all the time, unless you put the phone in airplane mode and then wrap it in tinfoil or a Faraday cage, using the cameras to map your facial expression. And the sensors that are on the cell phones now, they know what the phone can determine about you is like your eating times, from your bathroom times, from targeted advertising to because it it has a GPS on it. Even if it didn't have the GPS, it can still triangulate through cell phone towers, or maybe near field communication, other devices on it. The using the microphone to study vocal inflections. It's like, oh, they wouldn't do that. Like, assume a bad actor got in there and hacked into the system. Bluetooth jacking used to be a thing. Where even having conversations on the phone with people you think might not be enough one day in the future. If there's a sufficiently advanced AI, they can map behavior and emulate it. It'll be able to do almost anything it wants to do in the digital realm. And if those androids from Tesla get better, eventually you'll be in the Blade Runner territory. The thing, he's literally me, that is slowing this down was the price of the goggles is too high, and the computing power is still a few years away, so people weren't that interested in it. So I would consider it a bad sign if the price on the goggles, if they made it more accessible, if the price came down and they started pushing people back into a virtual world. Now, the other thing slowing it down is that the mainstream everything is starting to die. And I'm guessing that this is a permanent shift. Everything from movies, games, mainstream media, and social media, all the things that would be able to exist in a high-trust, socially cohesive society just don't make sense in a low-trust, low social cohesive society where people are more isolated. And these AIs are not going to be cliches, obviously, pushing Soylent Green or something that on the face of it is nefarious and telling you that your large-scale removal by replacement at the demographic level is actually your strength, and the cultural enrichment is in your imagination. And actually, the gangs of communities of Malaman say enjoyers against girls of European descent is those bad actors are actually the tea-drinking English men. It's not going to be that obvious. A sufficiently advanced AI is going to be able to pass the Turner test with flying colors, or Cecil's the Nasser Rabati test. Speaking of which, Cash Grab 2, the the Tunnel edition, is on Fund My Comic in case anyone wants to get a copy. It actually looks fantastic. Indiegogo banned him because he had a character that was a member of the BLT community. And I guess they didn't think he was. I guess Cecil is trans, and they didn't think he was serious about that. Assume that they're going to use AI to advance their interests. And you can also assume that their interests are adverse to yours because these people are monsters and they don't view you as human. You're just cattle to them to just be debt slaves, born into a slave system. And there's nothing that says these entities have to stay on the mainstream platforms. There's nothing that would stop them from infiltrating Gab, and being careful to glow just the right amount to entice people. Telegram, Odyssey, BitChute. In a few years, they're going to have these avatars that are able to run their own video channels. Like, what do they call those VTubers, where they use little cartoon characters or something? Admittedly, the technology is not there yet, but it's on the way. And that's why IRL things are going to be more important. Heaven forbid people get together and go camping for a weekend. Think of that'd be interesting. I mean, you can use social media for that, to use social media to organize IRL events. And oddly enough, in the beginning of social media, in the late 90s or early 2000s, that's what social media was used for. It was used to get you to a nightclub, a bar, to listen to a local band play or celebrate somebody's birthday. It was it was probably like 25 years ago now. It was a much different environment, because it wasn't good enough in and of itself to sit on social media. It was just the tool to get you to actually, be around usually members of the opposite sex, or be around friends and communicate with people. And now the computer is the destination. It's pretty dark when you think about it. So think of the mind that would create AI social media characters to try to start to normalize this. And that's what a lot of this is, to manipulate people. And Facebook is an aging platform, or I don't know what you call that when the technology, where the platform has reached it's not a growth company anymore. Now it's paying dividends. It's huge, but like all mainstream platforms, it's slowly losing influence. So they could use AI characters to keep probably the audience is 50 years old. The boomer mentality on the site longer to expose them to more advertising, and more importantly, if they were manipulate their political views, if they were just trying to shill Marvel movies, that would be the most benign use of manipulation. But you have to go way beyond that and assume the worst, and the worst would be manipulating how you feel on things. And if you don't believe in the power of brainwashing, look at the views of people in, say, 1960 in any Western country compared to now. All that was done with globalist media repetition of the message. That's the most I was reading about brainwashing, advertising, and the key thing is simply repetition of a message. Where people that puff out their chests and call themselves conservatives, they recoil in horror at what their grandparents believed. Most people today don't know what their views are. They have this surface level programming that has been generational, so they can go farther left, which we in the alternative media community are doing our best to break them out of this by breaking people out of political correctness bit by bit, to push them to realize that, but political correctness is this artificial constraint put on you, and it's very freeing when you start piece by piece saying the things that you're not supposed that someone told you you're not supposed to say, and you think, oh, I don't want to say those things. It's like, are those organic views or are those artificially imposed on you? And you start looking at it and you go, we do need to say anything and everything. Like, the truth doesn't fear investigation. No sacred cows. You have to say no words should be off limit type of stuff, and it changes the way you think when you realize that. Anyway, Facebook and DARPA. Yeah, the less mainstream everything, the better. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys on the next episode.